positions. So we now have a mechanism which is in the works and which is being in the process of implementation, which is that every client of the broker, if the broker goes down, will be able to have direct access to the exchange in order to manage his position for risk reduction and to close out his positions. He cannot take fresh positions, but to close out his positions and to manage that risk, he can actually go there directly to the exchange, even if the broker is down. So this is what I mean by a slightly non-traditional approach to cybersecurity, which is much more a community approach, ecosystem approach. It's a I have your back, you have my back approach. It's not a I, me, myself approach. And we think that as a market ecosystem as a whole, the entire ecosystem has really stepped up to make this a reality, and we're extremely proud of the ecosystem that this has actually happened. The next thing that I would like to talk about is, I'm sure, something that's been talked about a lot in this space, which is artificial intelligence. And I would like to share with you what we think is going to be the role of artificial intelligence going forward, both in the marketplace and therefore a huge opportunity for fintechs to come in and build their products and services, as well as an opportunity for the regulator itself to improve the way in which it does regulation and to improve the manner in which it actually makes life easier for the ecosystem. So first on the regulator. This is a very typical thought process which is prevalent in the mind of a regulator, saying it takes just one bad apple to ruin the whole pie. And many of our regulations have traditionally been based on this assumption. But we believe that this assumption is now ripe for disruption, just like business models commercially have been completely transformed by technology. We believe that this thought process of the regulator also is ripe for transformation. Why is that? Because this one apple, which in the past we had evolved in two ways. First was one size fits all, one regulation for everybody. With the help of technology, we have today reached the stage where we do at least segmentation. So of course, in common parlance, it's called risk-based. So not only risk-based supervision, but also risk-based regulation is what the regulator is moving towards, and saying that if there are different segments that carry different risk, then we should be able to even have regulations which are designed accordingly. So for instance, we have recently announced that we are going to have a regulation called Mutual Fund Lite, LITE, which means that the entire rule book which governs mutual funds will be down to 10% because certain kinds of business which mutual funds do, like for instance passive investment, do not meet the whole rule book at all. So a segmented approach is something that we had already moved into, but what artificial intelligence will allow us to do is to actually differentiate between the good apple and the bad apple at a much more granular level. And therefore, we believe this will allow us to take regulation to a level where the risk management will be almost custom fit for the entity. So it will become a situation where if the entity has really managed its risk well and has demonstrated all the parameters of being a good apple, then the level of regulation that will apply, the level of supervision that will apply, and so many other things that would apply would automatically be of a lower level. So this move of risk-based supervision to risk-based regulation to segmented regulation to now very granular level regulation is something which we see that artificial intelligence will have the potential to give us that ability to do that, and therefore make life a lot easier for all regulated entities. But even more importantly, I think that the biggest opportunity that fintechs today have in the markets is that over the years, the regulator has focused on, and that has been its principal mode of regulation, is disclosure-based regulation. And we know that internally within SEBI, we were at times questioning ourselves that have we made disclosure reach a level where it has become information overload? Has it reached a level where people now actually cannot make out what they are supposed to make out of the disclosure? This was a thought that was worrying us. But now, as we see the way that artificial intelligence is evolving, we believe that whether it is in the space of disclosures made by listed companies or by mutual funds or by PMS managers or investment managers, anybody in our domain, those disclosures, if artificial intelligence is applied on them, this can become the tool for giving very, very high quality input and advice to possibly every citizen of the country at a very, very granular level. This is the potential that we believe that artificial intelligence and fintechs can leverage. Today, we have at SEBI already declared that data in the markets is a public good. It is infrastructure. It will be owned by the citizens of the country. So every piece of data that is mandated for disclosure by the regulator is available free of cost, conveniently downloadable with archives, and that is the mandate and the commitment that SEBI has made. I think we're about 70–80% of the way there. The balance 20% is in the works, and most of this is now being pushed in the form of being sure that it is machine readable, XBRL filings, etc., etc. And so the dream is, and that is what I would invite each one of the participants in this FinTech conference to really think about, that the big opportunity now is that what people consider an information overload in terms of market disclosures that the regulator mandates is actually a gold mine waiting to be analyzed, interpreted, insights to be taken, and then to be monetized by way of giving high-quality advice to a vast, vast variety of citizens in our country that need that advice. So that's the opportunity before us all, both for the regulator and for the market and for the country. And I look forward to questions that you may have regarding anything that we do in the markets.
Thank you, Ms. Buch, for that exhilarating set. Very, very informative. Thank you once again. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time to acknowledge, venerate, and recognize few of winners.
Some questions, and then we'll come to that.
Okay.
Thank you. No, we don't want to miss some opportunity to ask you some questions, ma'am. And so I had some questions, and to a large extent, all of these questions are answered. So I'm going to make up some of them. One of them is SEBI has been a very, very innovative regulator. One of the things that you've done is the Innovation Sandbox that you've announced. And there's quite a few projects that I've already seen that's happening. Do you care to speak a little bit more about, for fintechs, how this innovative sandbox can be used?
Certainly. So, the concept behind the Innovation Sandbox was that when a young company with young people wants to do something innovative, the first challenge that they face is how do they get the data and access to the ecosystem to be able to test out whether their application works or not. And therefore, what we did was to make this ecosystem, the APIs, the system itself, from our exchanges, our clearing corporations, our mutual funds, all of this to be available for testing along with test data. So if anybody needs to come and try out their idea, here is a place that you can come and try it out. And in fact, the I think what we are happiest about in this is that the eligibility criteria for this is practically nil. I think finally we came to the conclusion, if you do your KYC, I mean, it's almost like that. You do your KYC and get started. That's it.
And you don't need to be a regulated entity. Eventually, you need to be regulated.
So in the innovation sandbox, you don't need to be a regulated entity. We have a regulatory sandbox where you're actually allowed to go and operate in the live environment. For that, you need to be either a regulated entity or tied up with a regulated entity, because the SEBI Act doesn't allow us to do otherwise. So we are constrained. But
and they wanted to know if they can use the regulated sandbox. But this innovation sandbox, I think, is a good place for them to start before getting regulated. You kind of touched upon a very interesting concept called traditional morphing, and that's the word that you used. And you gave quite a good example of virtually everybody is a fintech today. But what are your asks for the fintech industry today, ma'am? I know you mentioned about the risk data and a couple of others. But what are your asks for the fintech industry?
so, our life as a regulator is quite simple. So our ask is on two fronts: what we would like to see them do and what we would like to see them not do.
Okay.
So what we would like to see them do is quite simple, that if what you are doing will democratize the markets further, we have all the time in the world for you, because that is our objective. It's part of our mandate. It's why we are here. It's there in the preamble of the SEBI Act. So what we would like to see you do is to take the markets to more and more people across the country and do it at a low cost so that it is inclusive in nature, is what our ask on that front is. What is our ask on what you should not do? It's equally simple. And I will actually quote a parallel example before I come to specifically answering this question. Long ago, somebody asked me the question of, what do you think is good governance? And I had a very simple answer, and I think Economic Times is going to love me for this, but I actually made this statement saying that when you are about to do something, you already know that tomorrow what you have done, if it is reported on the front page of Economic Times, and your mother-in-law calls you up and says, "Beta, ye kya news aayi?" Will you be able to hold up your head high and explain to her, or will you decline the call? You know. So, it's not important to define what good governance means. You just know when you are doing it, whether this is something that will embarrass you or something that you will be able to hold your head up high and explain. So I think my ask from FinTech is the same. What you are doing, if you are building a platform that allows people to literally seduce people into the market and make them lose their shirt, and then you say, "I'm only a platform," but there are thousands of people who are losing their money, their hard-earned money, because of what you are doing, you don't need a regulator to tell you. So what does your conscience say? Would you recommend your service to your mother-in-law? Ask yourself that question. All the people you are supporting on your platform, would you recommend that your mother-in-law deal with them?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. And I want to take a little bit of a cue from what you said, ma'am, is about fintech influencers or tech influencers. I know SEBI has been working around that and trying to come with it. And we've also done a hackathon trying to understand some of that. What are you thinking around that, and what is that we can expect in coming days from there?
I think we have recently expressed through, we express ourselves through consultation papers, and we have expressed our view to say that, we respect that there is freedom of speech in our country. We respect that there's freedom of expression. We respect that if people are doing genuine education, we respect all that. We have no problem with it. But if it crosses that line and becomes enticement, entrapment, fraud, then that's not okay. And as far as we are concerned, if somebody says, I'm a tech platform, we're okay with it. We have no desire to bring all tech platforms under our jurisdiction. But if you are not following our rules, then the people who are following our rules, the people who are registered with us, they cannot have any dealing with you.
Absolutely.
So it cannot be that people who are expected to follow the rules and do follow the rules partner with people who have no rules.
Right.
Because then by definition the whole ecosystem doesn't have rules. So we are very clear. If you wish to stay outside of the purview of SEBI, we have no problem. You have freedom of expression, no problem. But if you wish to deal in securities and if you wish to partner with people who are regulated entities, then there need to be rules. So you need to come register with us and so on and so forth. If you don't do that, then registered entities cannot have any dealings with you. So that's the expression of intent that we have made through our consultation paper, and that is what is currently under
Makes
discussion.
quite a logical sense, ma'am, and it's good to bring that regulation quickly. But I will stop my questions. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions from the audience. Probably we'll take a couple of questions because we also have a award ceremony after that. Anybody wants to ask a question? Yes, the lady in the front row. Yeah, if you can pass a mic to her. Can we start with the lady first, please? Yeah, thank you.
Hi, ma'am. Two questions. First is, as sir mentioned on the Innovation Sandbox, there have been only one application which has been approved till now, and I think 10 others have been rejected or withdrawn. What exactly are the challenges on the regulatory side that you're seeing based on the applications that are coming? And the second question is on the AI for granular supervision that you mentioned. Could you shed some more light on that? Thank you.
Sure. So I think that, we have perhaps not taken enough measures to explain and popularize what our innovation sandbox is meant for, and so we really welcome a forum like this to explain that. So there are three broad conditions that are required if you need to do something in the innovation sandbox. One is that your eligibility, as I said, is near zero. You just do KYC, you come. That's one. The second is that it needs to be something new. So very often what we find is that the applications which are coming are actually not new at all. They are existing things which people want that they should come in and be able to do without sort of so I'm saying, for instance, let's say somebody I'm taking a very plebeian example. There are already regulations for brokers. Somebody wants to come in and do broking itself. No matter what they may put on the application, when you have that discussion and debate with them, it's basically a form of broking only. So in which case there is a normal route available to you and you can come through that normal route. There's no need for you to come through this platform is one of the principal reasons why the applications get rejected. The third one is where the ask is for something which the Act does not permit. I'll give you an example. Something that we were very keen to do, we could not do. So for instance, fractional shares. Now, somebody came with that. We thought it was a good idea. We would have wanted to welcome them into the innovation sandbox. But it is not permitted in the SEBI Act itself. Now, until we change the Act, and by the way, not just the SEBI Act, the Companies Act. So until we change the Companies Act and the SEBI Act, even if we let them into the sandbox, it's not going anywhere from there because the law simply prohibits it. So, but taking the learning from that, we are actually looking at saying that in the SEBI Act, is there some way in which we can now incorporate something of this nature? So these are the basic, reasons why things do not, I would say, progress. But I think the reason why we don't have more interest is because we haven't really reached out. And I think it's our task to reach out to people and say, this is the facility available and you can come and try out your stuff here.
Yeah,
Sorry,
thank you.
what was the second question?
Yeah.
On the granular assessment or the supervision that you mentioned.
Yeah. So, we have already done this. I would say we've built algorithms, but we haven't yet started applying artificial intelligence, which I think we will move in that direction. Some of my younger colleagues have promised that to me very soon. So I'm hoping that they would have, they would be advanced in some of their thinking on this. And all of this work, by the way, is done internally in SEBI, because we find that we have that capability. The youngsters have the domain understanding as well as the technology smarts, and they're able to do this. So, for instance, in the mutual fund industry, in the past, we used to have a very traditional inspection process where the auditor would show up and he would go through your books and then take a sample and then, do the inspection, and there would be fights about the interpretation of the law, and there would be a lot of up and down and allegations and counter allegations, and 1 year will go in that, then one report will come, then it will show up in SEBI, then SEBI will look at it, then another 6 months will go in that, and then finally something will come out of it. All very Baba Adam, okay? Now, what we have moved to is that we have said in a very transparent way, we've told the industry that, look, here are our 80 regulations, and there are actually 80. Let me stand up for a moment. There are actually 80 of them. So we've developed 80 algorithms, and we've shared this in a very transparent way with the industry to say, here is the logic. Because when you write an algorithm, you have to clearly articulate what is your interpretation of the law. They cannot be if, but, then, that, this, nothing. When you write it as a piece of software, you have to be very clear about every case, every scenario, and the logic that will apply. So these algorithms were written, 80 of them. And today as we speak, every quarter, first of all, every month the mutual funds give us their data. So SEBI ingests the data, keeps it. Every quarter we run these 80 algorithms, and at the end of it, each mutual fund gets an Excel sheet in their mailbox. When they open that Excel sheet, there are about 20 tabs relating to different regulations covering mutual fund. When you open that tab, either it will be nil, which means congratulations, no violations at all, or it will say, here are 5 records. On such and such day, you did such and such transaction which violated such and such regulation by so much amount, and this is your penalty. Now, when we first implemented this, there was an interactive way of sorting it out. There were a small number of false positives. The algos were refined. Today, as we speak, this 80 is going to about 100, and there is no dispute. There is no difference of opinion. Everybody understands this. And because people now understand the logic and the interpretation of the law, they are taking preventive action beforehand. And as compared to our first few runs, we hardly find a handful of violations now. So it has worked excellently for everybody. There is no wastage of time and management bandwidth on this stupid audit which is coming and inspection which is happening, all a thing of the past. And whatever it is, it's in black and white, well known, understood, and that's the end of the story. So we are actually moving to doing this across the board for almost every regulated entity. And therefore, but I still say this is, as you can imagine, these are algos which are written in a very rule-based manner. As we move into more sophisticated supervision, so for instance, we are working on this question of mis-selling. Now, mis-selling may happen by a mutual fund distributor or a agent or whoever, which is the responsibility of the mutual fund. Now, this is not a straight algorithm. You cannot write a rule-based logic for this, but you need a certain amount of intelligence which is layered on this. So we are now working to see that how can we develop algos which have inbuilt intelligence to recognize that if you have invested or if you have sold a very high risk, long gestation product to a 90-year-old. By the way, we actually found such a case, 7-year lock-in period for being sold to a 90-year-old person. Now, at the very least, this is an alert for mis-selling. It may so happen that this person is very well off and this is part of his or her legacy planning and he has no need for the money in the next 7 years. It's possible. But at the very least, the intelligence should tell us this is a potential mis-selling. So as we move into layering artificial intelligence over the data, we hope that we will also find the ability to monitor these kind of things in the interest of the investors and not just the simple rule-based things.
No, thank you so much, ma'am. That was a very big explainer and also tells you how passionately that you're looking at this particular project. And we are on the receiver end, so we know what happens there. In the interest of time, one last question, and then we will take on maybe somebody in the back, because most of you are in the back. I wish you were all in the front, but somebody in the back can ask a question. Yeah, one question, last question, please. Can you pass the mic there in the center of the hall, please?
आपका नील रिपोर्ट आ रहा है ना सर?
Yeah, please ask your question.
Yeah. Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you for explaining the do's and don'ts very well. When it comes to payments and lending, I think inclusion has already been taking place and is growing at a fast pace. But when it comes to investments and wealth advice, probably only the top 1% elite really have access to good advice. The remaining 99%, for whom maybe digital platforms are needed, are still buying products. There is no solutions orientation. And my request would be if you could do things wherein ease of doing business could be provided, awareness can be created, because 99% people probably don't even know the difference between registered advisors and unregistered advisors. And a level playing field could be provided between the various intermediaries. Then I think the democratization in investments also can happen, truly happen, and happen at a fast pace. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that that's absolutely the need of the hour. We are very, very keen to do this. As I said, unfortunately, what we have seen in evidence right now is the bad apples. We would really urge the good apples to come forward. We are wanting to see more and more proposals which are the good apples coming forward to say what is it that you think we need to do, what are some of the structures you would like. One of the things that we have recently proposed is that there be a performance validation agency, because all advisors have told us that how can we sell a product or advice or a service to anybody if we are not able to make a claim about the performance of what we do. And we agree, because we understand that a business has to be built, you have to sell something to a customer. But it's just that, as I said, if you claim performance that your clients make 5 crores a month, that's not the kind of performance that we think is validated, to say the least. And therefore, structurally, we are trying to find solutions structurally that the good apples, there are lots of good apples, we're looking for those good apples to come to us and say to us that what is it that we can do to facilitate that you actually come in and give genuine advice to people. It's not simply an enticement mechanism and a machinery to entice people to come and trade in F&O and lose lakhs and lakhs of rupees while giving brokerage of many thousands of rupees. That's not the intent, right? That's not your intent, not our intent if you're a good apple. So in short, we would really, really love for you to come and share with us as to what you would like us to do. But we cannot have a situation where enticement and entrapment of investors happens. That's simply not an acceptable option.
No, I think that was a perfect note to end this Q&A, ma'am. What we will do is take 2 minutes and explain about the hackathon that SEBI kind of sponsored and we were able to do. If you can just talk about the hackathon, and we'll call the winners on the stage and then wind up the session. Thank you.
Yes, so now we'll be acknowledging the winners from Hackathon, which was done in association with SEBI. The idea is to acknowledge people whose work, whose tech prowess really stood out. We're giving a check prize and also the certificate to all the winners. So let's begin with our first runner-up, and the winners team is Catapult, and I'd request Mr. Shreyansh Pawar to make his way on stage to receive the first runner-up award. Shreyansh Pawar. Mr. Shreyansh Pawar from Catapult, if you're around. All right, ladies and gentlemen, like ma'am was saying, there's a lot of young talent doing a lot of riveting and promising work. So I think it's a moment of acknowledgement. So let's really cheer for them and make sure we acknowledge them in full throttle. We have our first runner-up of SEBI Hackathon, Team Catapult, Shreyansh Pawar.
Well done.
Congratulations, team. Now it's time to announce our runner-up, and the winner is Team Emperor. Can I request Hindesh, Akash and team to come on stage, please? Ladies and gentlemen, these are young talent who are redefining the ways of using tech with all the compliances in order. So let's make sure that their acknowledgement, their veneration on such an important stage gets acknowledged.
God bless you.
Team Emperor, we have with us Hindesh, Akash. Congratulations.
Well done.
All right, it's now time to call the winner on stage. And the first prize, the winner of SEBI Hackathon is Team Devesh. Can I request Devesh Chaudhary to make his way on stage, please? We are felicitating all the winners of SEBI Hackathon with the intent of finding the best hacking talent, people with great technical prowess. Congratulations.
I just wanted to take a minute because I thought she's going to announce, but she did not. We had one of the most fantastic hackathon this year, ma'am. We had 2,500 entries coming for this track that we had. One was on building a curated experience for content, and the second was on finding out contents which are not in line with regulations. So there was a very interesting two-track hackathon, and 250 final entries were kind of considered, and 85 winners were given a chance to pitch, and we had a big jury with both SEBI and external entities, and this time it was fantastic. Some very good AI/ML, chat GPT capabilities were showcased. So I wanted to give you a quick, all the thing that you talked about AI, was all these youngsters have been doing it, ma'am. And before we leave, thank you once again, ma'am, for this wonderful session. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we give a huge round of applause for Mr. Jain and Mrs. Buch? I think that was very informative, very, very clutter-breaking and really transparent. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to our next segment, we'll be